All right, everyone, let's now turn our attention to happenings in Adamawa State as the state government says former Vice President Atiku Abubakar is not a target of a chieftaincy reform, barring non-indigenes of emirates and chiefdoms from holding council positions in such locations. The government said that no particular person is targeted by the new order, but it seeks a wholesome leadership in the different emirates and chiefdoms across the state. And to help us further understand the situation on ground and government perspectives to some questions begging for answers, Dr. John Gwanza, Special Advisor on Communication and Strategy to Governor Madu Fintiri, joins me on the program tonight. Good evening to you, Dr. Gwanza. Thanks a lot for joining us. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again after a long time.
Right. Thank you so much. You know, you remember the last time we had a conversation, it was about how the governor finally bowed to pressure, because for 3 years now, many communities in the state had been advocating for the creation of additional chiefdoms. Also, the information at that time was that there was no pressure from anyone. It was just a political move by the governor, which you reacted to. But now there are additional chiefdoms and emirates. Now there is a reform, with many seeing the reform as being Governor Fintiri's way of whittling down the influence of former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, who hails from Jeddah in Ganye Emirate, but holds the council position of Waziri Adamawa in the Adamawa Emirate. How do you react to some of the speculations out there?
Well, it's quite funny, you know, when you follow the media. To my understanding, there's something over-ambitious and false about the speculation that the former vice president is targeted, you know, for some kind of discrimination or embarrassment. That is not true. Now, you, from the background, mentioned the fact that the governor was on agenda, you know, to do the wish of the people in terms of calling for more chiefdoms, which he succeeded in creating. So we have had 7 before, and now we have additional 7, you know, making up a total of about 14 or thereabout, with the aspiration of the fact that if there's any need based on the wishes of the people, we can still have more. That, to my mind, is just what it is. It is a well thought out thing that has a law that passed through the House of Assembly that has been implemented. With all things being equal, successfully, all the emirs and chiefdoms have been installed, and they've set up and are doing well and doing that which is right. Now, you will accept with me, for instance, let me just give you this scenario. If out of a particular kingdom or chiefdom,
Dr. Ganza, are you there?
In between to do that which is right, in the process of trying to make the administration right. So you say that the vice president have been somewhere around Ganye chiefdom and ably also honored to be in the Emirate Council here, you know, in the Lamido's palace, you know, as a waziri. That in itself is one of those things that keep moving on. But there is no deliberate policy. His name is not mentioned anywhere. Nothing is done specifically to drag him into disrepute or be placed in shame or something like that. I think the administrative things that are going on and the policy statements being made is just to aid the chiefdoms that are created to ensure that they do that which is right, good enough to fill up the lapses that are likely to be from time immemorial when it comes to such administration. So to me, there is nothing there that is so way off the specific saying that the former vice president is being targeted for embarrassment or something like that.
Okay.
Something like that.
Right. But from the information I have, Dr. Gamze, the new Adamawa Emirates now consist of only 5 local government areas. That's Yola South, Yola North, Gire, Mayobewa, Song, and Zuma districts. And former Vice President Atiku Abubakar is from Jeddah local government, which now falls under the newly created Ganye chiefdom. So with this new reform, does it mean that Atiku Abubakar can no longer be the Waziri of Adamawa, but if he wants to retain the title, he can be the Waziri of Ganye? Is that correct?
Well, I think people are mixing issues up. These chiefdoms were created based on needs and specification.
Okay.
And they are not created to glorify any title holder Like I keep saying, there are titles that are given in honor, and those titles are just names. In the case of Waziri, for instance, I think maybe you need a little bit of research to understand that there are roles that are specific to do with the idea of kingmakers, some to do with the idea of just title holding, and others to do with those that are to operate within councils. That operation, until you come close, you'll not get to understand it. Now, I've said it earlier, just like I've been trying to emphasize, there's nothing so specific about it. He was given a title, in Ganye, under Gangwari, the Sama Kingdom or the Chamba Kingdom more precisely. And then later, there is this addition to his own title back here in Yola. Perhaps the role is not what is defined enough for any onlooker or distant observer to understand. There's nothing to it to say that he's being stripped of any power other than just the fact that there are certain things that are now expected to be done, according to the jurisdiction of application, good enough for some of these kingdoms to have their own title holders, at least covering the specification that they've been given based on the chiefdom that are created.
So
nothing is happening. You can still...
Okay, Dr. Ngamsa, kindly hold on so we're clear about this. And you must also remember that... Kindly hold on, Dr. Ngamsa. You must also remember that this is not about me. This is about what Nigerians are saying and the kinds of speculations out there. So that's why you're in the program to help us spell out the fact. So you have also said that, or insinuated that he has not been stripped off of this title, but there are some things that need to be done. What are those things? And can you also confirm that whoever will be... Okay, so kindly answer that question first before I move on with the next question, so we can move on to other issues.
Yeah, please, with all due apology, I was just specifying to you, maybe I was just using a generic reference at least to tell you that some of these things are prolific on the pages of social media, more especially. And you'll accept with me that they've not been thorough enough. And whoever puts up something there without verification is likely not to definitely get it right. So what I'm simply trying to emphasize here is the simple fact that you've just said nothing specific is done to drag him into disrepute or to bring him out of it or to strip him of any title. The specification here is the issue of the fact that people, yes, have had their own kingdoms and adjustments will have to be made. And what will be made are clearly specified, at least in the aspects of the edict that is being drafted and presented to the House of Assembly that is passing, the amendment procedure, good enough to make amends that will suit the operations of some of these traditional areas in such a way that they will not repeat the kind of mistakes that have been there, that have been tampering with certain things that are not in order. I think on good record, the spirit of that particular presentation is set to bring unity, to avoid secession vacuum, and then to ensure that some of these kingdoms effectively do that which is right, and then to avoid cross-cultural conflicts that are likely to occur in the process of title giving and when it comes to issues of appointment and deposition orders, and now law, at least in the state. So to my understanding and clear giving, I will comfortably let you know that this and nothing more are the objectives to which, these amendments are being made, at least to make administrative expedience, for virtually everything to be smooth in the process.
All right, Dr. Ngamsa, but for the purpose of clarity, so there is no ambiguity with this conversation. What you've just said is that former Vice President Atiku Abubakar stops being Waziri of Adamawa until some things get done. Is that it?
No, I don't think he's not the Waziri of Adamawa per se, but the issue is still left, to the person that gave him the title, that is the Lamido of Adamawa, to make his own arrangements good enough at least to put it in order. Now, let me give you a small picture of what perhaps an outsider might not realize. The new emirate that is created in Fofore, for instance, it's been an integral part of the Lamido palace and Lamido, the Fombina formation. That in itself is to say that now that there is another emirate, the jurisdiction will now differ a bit to mean that he cannot cross his rules and double, between the Adamawa, and the Fofore Emirate, for instance. Earlier on, it's just geographical spread that is affected by local government creation that put peoples differently. But then the needs and the yearnings that brought about the idea of more creation, is not to say that somebody is depleted per se, but just to say that there is an improvement on it, good enough to allow other people to also participate. And I believe it is by the good intention and the good records of those taking care of the emirates and other formations and other traditional thrones to insist on making it work out fine. The policy statement that perhaps that is flying presently, specifying issues, is set on good order and good spirit to clear issues to do with duplication of roles and difficulties that may be found, in the process of traditional administration. It is for the purpose of clarity. I wish people, will be a little more patient or analytic or investigative, to get the details as so required. And I believe that is the intention that TVC is trying to commit here